Welcome to the Brooklyn podcast with yours truly, Anthony Puccio, my co-host, Colin Helwig. Colin, I'm going to get right into it. Basketball has begun. Happy hoops. How are you feeling about the game? Nets lost 120 to 116. It was a close battle. How are you feeling?
So we got one down and we got 81 to go. I'm feeling good. I think a lot of people were like, this was what you want out of the Nets. Let's not kid ourselves. We know most likely this is not a roster that's going to help us win a championship. That's your end goal. The most likely path to a championship is if you set yourself up with a good draft pick at the end of this year. So team went out, they competed. They gave us a watchable product. I think anyone who watched the game probably was entertained. They had a good time. Cam Thomas made some crazy shots. There was some scuffles. Maybe that's not the kind of entertainment you are paying for when you go to watch a basketball game, but nonetheless, it was an entertaining loss, and the Nets did what they have to for the crowd that is thinking we got a tank. So I know that's a little bit of a trigger word, but just keeping it real here. What do you think, Pooch?
Well, a lot of the sentiments that you said ring true. I mean, I wrote an article before, kind of a rebuild guide for the Brooklyn Nets in the 2024-25 season. And in the context of a rebuild, everything you're saying is accurate. I went into last night looking to see really how to evaluate Jordy Fernandez and how he interacts with his group, how hard these guys play. Um, you mentioned the scuffles, and I'll get to that later, but just the idea that these guys are on the bench, they're clapping, they're applauding. They're not getting punked. Like, they know that the expectations are low. They know the chatter around this team, and
They're not
I
getting
don't.
punked. They're throwing out shots, baby.
They're the ones throwing the shots, and you love to see it. Look, it's game one, right? It's only game one. We have a long season to go. We'll see if they're still doing that come February, if they're 10-30 at that point. But the idea here is that Jordy Fernandez looks like he's established a fast-paced offense. He wants to shoot a lot of three-pointers. He's got that Brooklyn grit. He said it after the game. I'm kind of proud of the 32 personal fouls because it showed that we're playing physical. So I like what I saw. It's only game one. I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but from a rebuilding perspective, I think this first impression is very solid from the Nets.
I'm astounded, and I love Dennis, but I can't believe that there were two fights and Dennis Schroeder had zero part in any of them. Like, Dennis is the guy who's like, I still anytime I think of Dennis Schroeder, I think of that video where he was on OKC, and I don't know who it was, but he crossed someone over on the Lakers and was just like smiling in the face as it. Like, Dennis Schroeder is a guy who will get in and annoy the hell out of you, and you love a guy like that to have on your team. I think Dennis is the perfect guy for this Brooklyn grit, as we call it. But yeah, no. All jokes aside, though, with Jordy, I like seeing, like, I think this is maybe just like a me thing, but something I kind of look for in younger coaches. Like, you're closer to the players because you're like a younger guy than like Pop. Obviously, you'd love to have Pop, like a Popovich, or like I remember when the Pelicans hired the one Van Gundy brother, and I was like, how is this guy going to relate to this young Pelicans team? Like, there's not going to be any sort of
Right.
like kinship, and I feel like Jordy has a chance to do that. Like, even though no one wants to see your center clothesline another player, after that happened and the Nets were scuffling with the Hawks, he didn't send Juwan Howard out there even though that probably would have been bigger because Juwan's an absolute beast. He was out there pulling his guys back, saying like, "Get back to the bench." He wasn't
Right.
pushing anyone, but he was boxing out a little bit. He was involved. You know what I mean? Like, he very much was like, I don't want to say he was in the fight because he definitely wasn't. And if a coach was in the fight, that'd be a big story. That's not the
Right.
story. But he was present. He jetted out of the bench and he was there. I liked what I saw from him that way. And I don't know about you. If you watch the way that this offense plays in terms of the screens and the way they're setting up shooters with pin downs, they're doing more ghost screens in yesterday than I think I saw all of last year. It's like we went from doing an offense that was addition and subtraction to now we're doing like pre-calc, like an algebra. I won't say we're all
Yeah.
the way up to calculus yet, but it's a whole new kind of offense. There's a lot more going on, more bells and whistles. I liked it from a majority perspective for sure.
Yeah, the intangible things. You make a good point as a young coach, right? How you can connect to players. And I remember speaking to an agent of a veteran player at the time that went to go play for Pop in San Antonio, and he said, "I my client is very unhappy. He doesn't like this boot camp style. He doesn't like to be, you know." spoken down to. I think that the point that he was trying to make is, as an established veteran in this league, it's hard to kind of mesh with this generation of players, right? It's two different type of styles of ball, and it's two different types of style of personalities, right?
Mhm.
You have to communicate with them differently. You have to coach them differently. It's not so much of a coddling mentality, but there is. I think Spencer Dinwiddie said it a couple years ago when he was on the Nets. You know, a head coach is like a kind of like a therapist in a way. Like I forget
Yeah.
what the word he used was, but he said kind of like a mediator in the room. Uh,
Mhm.
we're professional basketball players for a reason. We don't need to really necessarily be taught how to play the game, but rather mesh and come together as a group and need a leader that can get us there. With
Mhm.
Jordy, it's funny. You bring up Juwan Howard. Juwan Howard, the Yes Network did a great job of showing this that Juwan Howard actually quite literally, yeah, with his big
Put that
wingspan.
wingspan to use, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, put that wingspan to use, had those guys on the bench. I love that he got right in there, and before Jordy even got in there, Clax, seeing the discipline in these young guys, you could call it immature, you could call the foul immature, you could say whatever you want about Claxton, but as soon as opposing player got in his face and they were in the stands, you'll see Clax. He puts his hands up. He says, "I don't, like I don't want to do this." Like he took accountability and he tried to walk away,
Mhm.
and he wasn't able to. I mean, the scuffle was already there, and that's
Yeah.
when Jordy got him out of it. But he did put his hands on him quickly. But he then said, "You know what? Like I screwed up here. Like that was my mistake." Like he didn't want to fight. Like he didn't want to go there. Like I
Yeah.
think if he could, he would have apologized. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the same thing happened with Cam Thomas, which was a
That was
common foul,
ridiculous. Yeah.
a ridiculous, ridiculous thing.
I didn't get it, like, Dyson Daniels, you already went to fight Claxton. You already proved to us that you're a tough guy. It's okay.
Right.
You can sit down now.
Right. It felt like they were instigating him, and Cam walked away. He walked away immediately. It was a common foul. It was a hard foul, but a common foul at that. And he walked away, obviously not looking to engage in anything. And look, Jordy hopping in there showed great leadership. Right. We could talk about Juwan Howard doing all that, but the fact that these guys do have the discipline to walk away, right, not get punked, but to walk away and say, you know what, I understand what it is. I'm not going to get teed up. I thought it was nuts that Cam got teed up. He walked away and didn't want to engage, but you
It's the
know,
first night. The refs, they wanna set a precedent for the season.
right. And I could also understand trying to get the game under control. That wasn't very long after the Claxton foul. So like,
No, it was right after. It was, like, 2 plays
right,
after.
right. So it was kind of like, you know what, guys, let's ring this in, right? So
Yeah.
I thought the T was ridiculous, but the point I'm trying to make, I think, is that Jordy has these guys kind of. It looks like they're mature. It looks like they're willing to take accountability. They're not going to get punked. And Colin, the way that it was, at least for myself growing up, playing basketball, we were always taught that if someone's going to drive in your paint, I'm not saying you cold clock him or clothesline him as he's going into the paint, but you let him feel it a little bit, right? And
Mhm.
in the NBA these days, we see so many soft fouls that turn into M1s.
Yeah.
As a fan, as a reporter, as somebody watching the game that loves basketball, I was proud of of not Nick Claxton, of Cam Thomas for the way that he fouled him. Like that he actually no, like you're not gonna get an easy bucket. You're gonna feel it. You're gonna earn these two free throws, and guess what? He missed the free throw. So
Yeah.
I was happy to see that from these guys.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think I said it's a because I was watching at home with some of my roommates. I was like, this is our token, and I wrote about it on Nets Daily. This is our token. Oh, now in the 90s, that would just be a common foul, but that won't fly today. Moment of the game. We get those all the time. So it's at least we got our first one out of the way early this year.
Yeah. And look, I think the theme of this episode is not so much even to uh dissect or overreact to one game, but I think that there's that famous line: you only get one chance to make a first impression, right? And
Yeah.
for for Jordy Fernandez, for the Brooklyn Nets in their new era, for Ben Simmons, for Cam Thomas, and they're all respective roles. Nick Claxton
Mhm.
now under a big contract. We're seeing these. I would love to dissect each and every single one of them. I think that we've already kind of touched on Jordy a little bit, but maybe you could break down some of the X's and O's because I saw a lot of off ball movement. I see a team that wants to shoot a lot of 3 pointers, a team that's really relying on Ben's speed to rebound the ball and get up the court within 3 seconds. They
Mhm.
they want to push. They want to push. They got a lot of offensive rebounds yesterday. What did you see? Maybe elaborate on your point from earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a lot more creativity on the offensive end. Where the Nets lost the game, though, it was they really lived and died by Ben and Dennis. Like, they did do a good job, and Jordy did a good job working through them to get looks for their guys. But Ben and Dennis both combined for 13 turnovers. There were a lot
Yes.
of turnovers that happened at inopportune times. I think they turned it over 18 times in total, something close to that. And it was the points in the paint. And that comes back unfortunately to Claxton getting ejected. You're already shorthanded with Sharp. Like, Okongwu had a career game, and that's because we
Yeah.
literally didn't have a starting center. In terms of the center position, the Nets went into this game, they were on 1 foot, and they chose to shoot themselves in that 1 foot that they were on when Claxton got out. So that's really where the game was won and lost. Trey got his. It's like a
Yeah.
36-12 game, like a quiet 36-12 game, but he
Yeah.
still got his. It was Okongwu who had the most points he's ever had a game in his career. That's where the game was lost. And the Nets were able to hang tight by pushing and getting those shots. And I don't think they shot a great percentage, but they shot a decent percentage where they were able to stick with them. The Hawks ran cold from time to time. So I liked what I saw from the offense in terms of creation. Like, the ceiling was good, but like the little things, like the fundamentals, taking care of the ball was rough, which is understandable in game one. But you can't have your 2 point guards turn it over 5 and 6 times.
Yeah. And
Excuse
I
me,
think
11,
that's
11 turnovers. 5 and 6
11
equals
turn.
11, not 13.
Yeah. Oh. Math tech, not our thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, clearly, clearly, clearly.
But look, even in the preseason, Jordy had said that he called out Dennis Schroeder immediately and said,
Yeah.
we didn't have our true point guard out there when Dennis had I think 5 or 6 turnovers in the preseason, and
Mhm.
we saw it yesterday. And I remember when the Nets started this running gun style with Kenny Atkinson, it was a similar growing pain that they had was that uh, were turnovers because you're pushing that ball so fast and you're trying to find the open guy.
Mhm.
Specifically in the case of a Ben Simmons, where he's really not looking to shoot the ball, and defenders know it. He knows it. He was aggressive maybe within the first 10 minutes of the game, but when you have a point guard like that, that's not looking to get his, that's not looking to score a bucket, put his head down, and get to the hole. Uh, it's fine to be pass first, but again, when you're predictable like that, they're just waiting for that kick out to the corner. They're waiting for that pick out.
Rajon Rondo was pass first, and then when the Celtics needed him to, he could also go for like 25 and bang the occasional three.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. Sorry, continue.
Right. No, and it's just I think a byproduct of how they are trying to play and the growing pains that come with it. You're trying to push and transition when you already have 4 defenders back. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a new era of ball, but when you
Mhm.
have a point guard like Ben Simmons, a ball handler like him that's trying to create and almost forcing it. And I believe this is why he had a bad second half is because the Hawks adjusted, right? He got his 6 points in the first quarter. He didn't want to go back to that. They played him a little bit higher up. So he was trying to force things that just simply weren't there.
Mhm.
And that comes with that fast decision making. That comes with, again, like getting a rebound instead of outletting it right away. You're dribbling it up the court because look, that's his strength. That he gets up there so fast. But uh, it was night and day from the first half and the second half, and seeing their identity kind of mold into Ben, like not completely, but to a certain extent, in how fast they want to play and how they want to utilize him at the 5, grab rebounds and go, push, shoot. These cons of that offense, there's the pros. They're hitting a lot of threes. They were getting a lot of offensive rebounds yesterday. Dorian Finney-Smith, I think, had like 3 or 4 alone. But
Yeah.
the cons of it are that, yeah, you're going to turn the ball over. You're going to miss a lot of shots. You're not going to get back on defense, which led to those two, one flagrant two foul by Nick Claxton, one that was, turned out to be Cam Thomas's hard foul. There's a lot of transition buckets for the Hawks,
Mhm.
a lot of fatigue on the defensive end. Again, as a byproduct of how their offensive system is, they're coming back and they're laboring. They're tired. and they
Yeah.
just had a very rigorous training camp. So
Hmm.
in game one, it's not that they look necessarily gassed out there, but you could tell how fast that they want to play offense is definitely impacting how they're going to play defense. And they did not play a very good basketball team last night. So
Mm-mm.
while it's exciting and we want to look at the positives, we also have to take a step back and realize it was the Atlanta Hawks and not the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, no, I think it even has a different feel. Obviously, the Nets weren't leaning closer into a rebuild this time last year when they like we remember that game against the Cavs. Like that was a game, but Cleveland's. I think Cleveland's one of the most underrated teams in the league. I think they just don't get attention because they're Cleveland and not New York
Yeah.
or Boston or whatever. But that's neither here nor there. It was that exact same kind of game, but it was against the Hawks. But if your team capture the flag, that's an important loss. We talk all the time about an important like must-win games. The Hawks are a team that the Nets might steal a win or two from. So if you are team tank, then it was a big one last night. It was a
Yeah.
big win last night. If you are team tank.
And they almost did. They almost pulled it out, and it was kind of funny. Like you think about those hard fought Nets teams in 18-19, like with those miraculous comebacks. Cam Thomas hit the three last night. Suddenly
He
they're
was
down by
fun. I had a blast watching him do his fucking thing in the last 2 minutes. That last
oh
shot
yeah.
he hit, I just started like laughing. I was like, this fucking guy. Like
We're gonna get to Cam. I do want to get your grade, your first impression. Forget first game, first impression grade for Jordy Fernandez, and then we're gonna move on.
I'm gonna give him a B. Maybe it's just a little lukewarm. Like I feel like I can't give him an A. Like if I give him an A, then my grading scale has like no respect. I'm like the boomer doom guys who give a 5 booms to everything. I mean the integrity of the boom meter is off, so I can't be given. I got to keep integrity with my scale. So not a B plus, not a B minus, just a B. He did a good job with what he had. Nothing that blew my mind out, but I think it was the best coached. I'll say it was maybe the competition isn't too hot, but it was the best
Yeah,
Nets coached game I've seen in a long time.
yeah. I'm gonna
What
give
would
him a
you?
B plus. I'm gonna give him a B plus. We've had this is now our seventh head coach since the Nets have moved to Brooklyn, and the first big part of this rebuild is finding stability at their head coaching position, at the leadership position there. So seeing his rotations, seeing an inspired Nets group, seeing an identity, at least in game one. Again, ask me again in February, but in game one, first impression, seeing an identity being established, a culture, hopefully that can, be planted yesterday and blossoming later in the season and for years to come. I'll give him the B plus in the context of a rebuild. But I want to move on. First impression, Cam Thomas, the number one guy. I know you got a lot to say.
Yeah, I mean, he started slow. I think he missed his first 3 or 4 shots from the field, but he did a good job. A lot of the things people have been knocking on Cam for years that he doesn't have the court vision, he doesn't look to pass. His defense wasn't spectacular, but I don't think like I mean he's a guard. His no one's ever. That's like you don't need to look at him and be like, oh, you need to become an A defender to have a successful NBA career. Steph Curry's not an A defender. Damian Lillard's not an A defender. James Harden is not even a D defender. You know what I mean? Like we don't need to look for that out of him. What we do need to see is the passing. He did a good job drawing defenders in, those driving kick actions we talk about. He was looking for his teammates last night. I mean, Cam's confidence has been the one thing no one has ever questioned. And so we would have no reason to question it. But nonetheless, he didn't let the slow start drag him down or anything. The shots at the end of the game, that was just good old fun hoop, like fun basketball that's going to entertain you. And I think he did a good job taking it inside too. The Hawks don't exactly
Yeah,
have a whole lot of enforcers, but he had one play where he drove in it was like the Harden-esque play where you kind of put the ball in front of you and you use your weight to kind of push the defender back and then go up with it. Then he mean
right.
mugged after that. I thought that was a good moment for him. So I liked what I saw. Nothing crazy, but yeah.
Yeah. I thought Atlanta played smart against him. I think
Yeah.
they really, really, especially in the pick and roll, you could see they were making sure there were hands everywhere. Everywhere that he was dribbling the ball, somebody was poking from behind him. They played very, very, very physical with him.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that he was getting the calls that he probably should have last night.
He absolutely was not. I think Jordy said
No.
post game like 27 shots and only like what was it, like 6 free throws? That doesn't add
Yeah,
up.
yeah, and mind you, it felt like a very quiet 27 shots because a lot of guys got theirs, and, the ball was spread, the ball was hopping. It
Yeah.
wasn't like it was just the Cam Thomas show, right? But I
Mhm.
thought Atlanta covered him very well. I thought they did a good job, on the pick and roll, kind of, like I said, getting their hands in there, playing physical. The big man that was getting picked, he kinda, like, shaded over just to show 2, and then
Yeah.
they would already have a tight defender on him by the time he got to the three-point line for those high pick and rolls.
Mhm.
So I thought that they forced him to make quick decisions, and early on in the game, in the first half especially, I thought he was a little bit flustered. I thought that he was forcing his game a little bit more than he needed
He
to.
had a couple, like, bad misses too, like, high off the glass and
Yeah.
stuff. He looked flustered.
Yeah, it looked like he was rushing, he was forcing his game, he was trying to get hot early and get into a rhythm, and I understand that from a scorer's perspective. But then he kinda let the game start to come to him. He started to pass out of double teams. He started to make the right decision. Like you said, took it to the hole on that one, realizing that they had a weak interior defense. He got the M1. On the defensive end, a couple slip ups here and there. He had a bad foul that led to an N1, but then
Yeah.
there's that one standout that the Nets they put on their social media that a lot of people are talking about. That defensive stop that he had, it was a crucial, crucial point in the game. Nets got the ball back, and you saw him, Nick Claxton, pumping him on the chest, him, flexing on with the bench and everybody going nuts. I saw strides in him, uh, maturity wise, to walk away from that scuffle on the offensive end to be a playmaker a little bit more than a scorer, even though he dropped 36 on 27 shots.
Mhm.
I saw a little bit of progress on the defensive end, not quite there yet, but progress nonetheless. And that alone for me, Cam Thomas, 36 points to start the season. Get ready for that scoring title, buddy.
There you go. Yeah. No, he's off to a good start. I think it would have been funny if they just let him and Trey Young guard each other and just said, "Fuck it. Let's just see what the fuck happens." Like, 2 just not guys known for their defensive school skill, but can just, like, hit shots. That would have been pretty funny.
That would be an immediate league pass alert for everybody.
Yeah,
You know what?
yeah.
Let's just
That's
let
that's
these two.
ball that's ball don't stops, like, wet dream is that.
That'd be 100 combined shots between the two of them.
Uh,
And people, I mean, Colin, I already see, I don't know about you, but on Nets Twitter, you already see like the division. Like Cam Thomas is such a polarizing player in the sense that like his own fan base doesn't know whether to like him or hate him. And it's so strange.
you know what I think it is? Like, this is me just kinda theorizing here. I feel like old heads are the people that don't like Cam Thomas. I feel like the older now I'm obviously stereotyping here, so there's outliers, but I feel like the older basketball fan thinks like, I don't want to see all the flash. Like, I want you to like they're probably in love with like Derek White, who
Yeah.
maybe doesn't like isn't really a real shot creator and like flashy, but he does all the little things right. And he plays defense and he plays both sides of the ball and he hits the shot when it matters. Like all the things that matter in terms of like an old school like basketball perspective where you're really just only concentrated on if the team wins or loses and they don't give a rat's ass if it's a spin around like jump shot at the buzzer or if it's just a layup. They just want to see 2 go in.
Yeah.
You know, like
Well,
I feel
yeah.
like when we're the younger generation enjoys watching, highlight tapes and grew up with YouTube and, like hoop mixtapes and stuff like that, and can learn to appreciate a guy who can put on a show versus a guy who is just like a winner. Both are good things, but it appeals to a different side, different type of whatever basketball that you like to consume.
Yeah. It's just very strange. I think a lot of people still also affiliate him with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in
That's
that
a very
era,
good point. That's a very good
right?
point.
I feel like Cam Thomas has this stigma that he'll never be able to get rid of, which is
It's
KD.
crazy that being associated with those guys is a bad thing. They're friggin' Hall of
Right,
Famers. Get over
right,
that they don't wanna play here anymore. Get over
right,
it. They're
right,
incredible basketball players.
right. If we could just look past all of those things that happened in
Would you
Brooklyn
would
and
you
just
rather would you rather him be associated with, like, Joe Harris, who we all love, but, like, no one's gonna be
right,
talking about Joe Harris, like, 50 years from now?
right. You
Maybe
have you
we
have
will.
you
Maybe you and I will, but
maybe me and you, yeah, exactly. Bob too.
Mhm, yeah.
But yeah, like you said, you have 2 certified Hall of Famers, stamped legends. that think the world of this guy, and it goes beyond. There's been several stars around the league that have spoken very highly of Cam Thomas. They
Mhm.
know what he's capable of. He goes up against some of the best players in the league, and he puts on a show. He goes 1 for 1. But the stigma around him, I don't think he'll ever really be able to rid unless he is the number 1 or number 2 guy on a winning Brooklyn Nets basketball team. But, like, the fact that they're in a rebuild, like, I see people like, "Yeah, he put up 36 in a loss," and it's like, well, look at what he's working with,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
instead of rooting for the guy or, like,
Oh, but they don't
seeing
wanna
the
hear that though.
positives.
It's, "Oh, this is
No,
empty stats," and, "Oh, not a winning player." That's such bullcrap.
it is definitely bullshit, and he look, Colin, in the news world, he didn't get the extension. He's gonna become a restricted free agent this upcoming summer, so he has a chip on his shoulder if he didn't already.
Mhm.
But I wanted to point that out because I thought the dynamic of, like, the Nets fan thing might disintegrate after Mikal Bridges was gone, which, so long, good riddance to Mikal. But, like, I thought that maybe it would go away with that, but I think that
I think it could as this year progresses. Like you said, he had that moment last night on defense, and, people forget that this guy is like yeah, he's like a scorer, but he's also a competitive basketball player. This kid is so competitive, and you'd see it. And every time he like speaks about the game, and also he's not an idiot. He played, went to LSU. He's in the NBA. He plays a lot of basketball. He knows that to win, you got to get timely stops on defense. And he showed that last night.
right. Everybody needs something or someone to blame. I just
Mhm.
find the dynamic of Nets world and Nets fans interesting. Again, you don't have to love the guy. You don't have to be a stan. You don't have to, like, be his biggest fan in the world, but he plays for the team that you root for. He's obviously a damn good basketball player if he could put up 36. I don't care who you are. Just on any given
Yeah.
night, this guy is dropping 30 pieces. And he's only 22 years old,
Hmm.
right? But his first night, his first impression as the lead guy, I would give him a B minus. What about you?
Yeah. B minus feels right. I hate being boring and picking the same damn scores, but C
So,
doesn't feel right. He scored 36 points. He led the entire game in scoring. You can't. I feel like you can't raise it anymore though, considering like we know Cam Thomas's scale. We've seen him do that on weight. Like usually a much more efficient scorer than that. It's like we've seen him do that in a lot fewer shots. Yeah, he likes to shoot, but he is an efficient basketball player. Look at his numbers. Like so, I think B minus feels right. Yeah, and they didn't win the game. Obviously, Cam Thomas is famous for going off in games that the Nets lose. I think that's more so because of the negativity of Nets Twitter rather than anything. But yeah, they didn't win. Wasn't the most efficient night. B minus feels fair though, considering the fact that he still led the game in scoring.
so on first impressions, we got Colin saying Jordy Fernandez with a B minus. Sorry, a regular B. Excuse me.
Hmm.
Colin's got Jordy Fernandez with a B. Pooch has him as a B plus. Cam Thomas both agreed, a B minus. Now we're gonna move on to everybody's favorite player and everybody's favorite subject, Mr. Ben Simmons. Colin,
C
I
minus.
could,
C minus.
I could feel that sigh.
Well, it's another thing where it's like,
Oh,
how do I? What am I doing with his scale here? Are we still trying to see Ben go back to being Philly Ben? That's what we get fed every summer. If
no,
that's the case, then it's literally like a D minus. Like, let's be real.
no.
But and to mellow it out a little bit more with our more realistic expectations of what we've seen with him in Brooklyn, C minus feels right. He had some good spurts, but 5 turnovers is really bad. I just think sometimes I feel like he goes out and you were right when you said like Atlanta did Q1 on him a little bit more and like play more to his weaknesses than his strengths, especially in terms of the spacing, especially when they played him with Claxton at the same time too. But he goes out sometimes and he scores. He puts up like 4 shots right away and then doesn't put up a shot for the next like quarter and a half. And I
Right.
almost feel like I don't know if he thinks this, but it's like, all right, I so we can go out, put the shots up, and get it in everyone's head that like, oh, he's back, he's coming out, and he's being aggressive, so that we can all us beat writers can go out and tweet that, and then it's like, all right, couple minutes go by, a couple more minutes go by, and then it dawns on you he hasn't put up a shot, and then all of a sudden there's 6 minutes and 20 seconds left in the third quarter. He puts up a shot, and you just realize it's only his fourth shot of the game.
Right. Right. I think it was funny. I logged on to Twitter yesterday and I saw a good friend of mine, Eddie Bansky Gonzalez, and he said, I haven't caught the Nets game, but I see that Ben Simmons had a great first half, and now he's the worst player in the world in the second half. And for somebody that didn't watch the game and people that didn't watch were probably really confused if they were just checking the Twitter world and saying like, because even myself, like I was like, Ben looks good, like
He also deserves some calls that didn't go his way. There was one moment where he was actually bleeding. The yes Cougars and
yes,
down on all these scratches. Like he's not doing that to himself.
yeah, he had blood all over his shirt, I think, and his shorts.
Yeah.
But look, my bar for Ben is just within how can he help the Nets? Not the 76ers Ben, not that guy. Like, what is he gonna do for this team? He looked good early. He looked aggressive. He still does that thing where he's very very clearly a dominant lefty.
Yeah.
But when he's on the left side of the hoop, he still does this like hitch thing where he shoots with his right hand, which is very confusing to me. I don't
Yeah.
know
I'm
if
not
it's
even
the
gonna
solution.
try to explain that. Like,
And you know what? I don't think we need anybody to, for that matter, and even him. I don't think he knows why. I think it's a mental thing. Like, but he looked good early. He started the game. He was 3 or 4 from the field. But as it progressed, the turnovers, the fouls. I mean, again, he had a good first half. He had a very solid first half. He set the tempo. He had that fast-paced style of ball going for the Nets. He was finding guys open. They weren't hitting shots. Some were. He had 8 assists on the night. So he finishes with 6, 8 assists, 5 rebounds. A typical Ben Simmons stat line that we've seen the last 2 years in the 52 games that he played, right? But he has 6 turnovers and 5 personal fouls. He went from being an asset in the first half when he was actually, not even aggressive, but willing to shoot the ball to a total liability in the second half.
mhm.
So I'm going to give Ben a C, and I'm going to give him a C out of just being generous that he was out there on the floor, giving it his all.
There it is. There's the scale coming. Like, also,
Yeah,
if you want to put it on the scale of a guy who's had like 2 back surgeries in the last 18 months, then you could give that like a B plus. You know what I mean?
right,
His scale is impossible with how you want to come at it. Like, so
right,
yeah, I
right.
sympathize. I sympathize with us and anyone who is grading Ben Simmons.
I just don't know why he won't shoot the ball in the second half. Because if he's at least thinking about it and keeping defenders relatively honest, he's a threat. Again, like his prowess to get that ball up the floor, I can't say it enough, is so important in setting up shooters because other teams know how good he
Yeah.
is at creating for others. So if you just show that you're a threat, if you show that you're thinking about it, even the mere thought, post
Yeah.
up, do
I
something. Like,
I just want to see him get downhill. Like,
yeah,
it's like you run down the floor and then you slow down a little bit and then you turn and you put your back to the basket around the free throw line and wait for someone to come around a screen. I don't like that. You're huge. You're fast. You go to the hole, buddy.
yeah. Well, six points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 5 personal fouls, and 6 turnovers. I think that his stat line is kind of on par with what we predicted, and I think that we're going to see a lot of this throughout the season. Maybe he'll become more aggressive. Maybe he won't. I don't know what the dynamic is going to look like when Nick Claxton isn't on a minutes restriction.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that we can safely move on. Um, give me your grade for the Nets' first game in terms of the bigger picture, not just the Nets versus Hawks, but in terms of the bigger picture, the rebuild, Jordy Fernandez, Cam Thomas, the development of Jalen Wilson. What do you think?
A minus. They like all the things you just said. Jalen Wilson had a good game.
Yeah,
So much of his MVP, I wrote about it on Nets Daily. So much of his summer league MVP was about 2 things: him having a quick trigger and him absorbing contact, getting to the line. He had more free throw attempts than anyone on the Nets last year. he had a great game. We had some good two-way play from Clowney. He had that great stop at the defensive end. It's hard for bigs to learn to go straight up. That's like something that it's like laying off the high outside pitch in baseball. It is you want to
Yeah,
go for the swat. No, he went straight up multiple times last night. Was pulling the three, hit one of them. He had a good night. The thing with the guy I just gave the lowest grade to was Ben Simmons, who comes off the books last year. So like in terms of what you said, the big
yeah,
picture, I thought it was a great game. We raved about Jordy. Cam Thomas looked good. All the guys who are you like Wilson, Clowney, Thomas had good games for the most part. I said we've seen better from Cam, but still positive rather than negative games. So I liked what I saw. The biggest pull down on that is that I think we're at a point now where like I like when Claxton shows his emotion. I think he plays better when he shows his emotion, but we just gave you a big contract. You're the most tenured guy in the team. That was a really just like not a smart moment in the game. So
no,
pulling it down from that, but Jordy, Cam, Wilson, Clowney, the guys that are going to be carrying the big picture, painting in that big picture, all
yeah,
had a good game. So I'm comfortable giving it an A minus. And they lost
yeah,
again.
yeah,
Cooper Flag, how you doing? Ace Bailey, how you doing?
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I'm with you. I'm gonna give him an A. Just again, it was a fun, entertaining basketball game. They established an identity. It looked like under Jordy, he coached his ass off. He looks like he belongs there. Cam Thomas, Jalen Wilson. I really like the way Zaire Wilson looked in the limited time that he did get. Just getting he was just very scrappy, and
Mhm.
I kind of felt like that was part of their identity too. I don't know if that was just first game jitters for both teams being sloppy or whatever, but the Nets seemed like they were getting their hands in a lot of passing lanes and doing things like that. So I thought Zaire was pretty solid in that facet. But Jalen Wilson quietly stole the night. That not a lot of people are talking about. That's something that's not in the headlines. I know you love him. I know you talk highly about him. Like you said, you wrote about him. This is somebody that looked like he was guns a-blazing right from the start that he checked into the game.
Mhm. Yeah,
He
no,
looks he
he he
looks
he
like he
was, yeah.
belongs.
He had the second most he came off the bench, he had the second most points on the team. Granted, the most points were 36, and he had 16, so there's a bit of a discrepancy there, but still the second most points he's had in a game, second most points in the game, second most points that he has had in a game for his whole career. A lot is said of the summer league MVP. Oftentimes, like I think I saw a list of it, and the guys who have won, it's like every other guy was either like went on to be a great player or was some name I'd never heard about. I don't know if Jalen Wilson's going to go on and win a regular season MVP or even be an all star, but he looked more like a guy who's going to last in the NBA for a long time than a guy who will be playing in China.
He's like,
No
uh,
disrespect to the Shanghai
n
Sharks.
none taken. Yeah, as if I have any credibility to say that, but
Sure, I will take it.
I do see, and I don't want to make too much of this, and I want to keep this brief, but I can see Jalen Wilson being a net. Like I see him being a Shaw Marks type of guy, similar in the aspect of Joe Harris, but I think he has more capability on the offensive end.
Mhm,
Um, but was really impressed with him. Was really impressed with a lot of young guys, and like you said, they came out of it with a loss. I at some point yesterday was kind of like, you know what, fuck it, let's get this win. Like it's just that competitive spirit in me. I can never condone losing, but like when it's all said and done, it's like I walked away from that game last night and I said, this was a great night for the Nets. They did everything that they needed to do. When they got into those scuffles outside of Claxton's Bush League foul, I
mhm,
was I was proud of those guys. I was like, this is good basketball. This is Brooklyn basketball. Like this is what we need to see from the start. And I tweeted it out. You know, in February when they face adversity or they're losing games, they're down in the standings. Can they sustain this now? Right? Can they still keep that level of inspired basketball, hardworking grit? Can they keep that going? I think that's the question and the conversations that we'll be having in a couple of months. But for now, I think it was a successful first impression for a lot of guys. Um, you know, outside Ben Simmons, which again, no comment.
it's alright.
I
Well,
don't know what
we're past it, we're past it.
we're past it. I do want to talk about and look, moving past things, but we have to talk about, it, and I think it's going to be a storyline throughout the season, especially because the Nets do have the Knicks picks for the next 5 6 years.
Yeah.
Mikal Bridges, his his shot in the preseason and his shot in Boston, I think he finished 7 of 13 because he got some garbage time buckets when they were down by 30.
He did, yeah.
But Mikal Bridges' shot looks like Michael Gilchrist and Rafer Alston. Now, he always had a little bit of a hit, not a full, but a little bit of
Yeah.
like a pull through.
It wasn't all one motion, but it was I wouldn't have called
You
it
know what
a
I'm
hitch, but it wasn't quite
No.
all one motion. It was like a rise and flick almost kinda thing.
Yeah,
Honestly, a little bit similar to Ray Allen, at least in my opinion. That's
a
high
little bit.
praise, but
It was very much above his head, and it took a
yeah.
little bit of time to get to that point.
Mhm.
Like, it wasn't a quick shot for
Yeah.
him. But now with the Knicks under the bright lights, with his buddies over there, and look, I'm not trying to kick someone while they're down, but this is the same guy that averaged 26 points per game for the Brooklyn Nets 2 years ago. Last year was coined their face of the franchise, wanted out to go play with his friends over there. The Nets nabbed 5 first-round picks for him, which is looking like a fleece. It's still very early to say, and good luck to the Knicks, but his jump shot looks broken right now. Like, it does not look good, and it's
Mhm.
never a positive sign when someone's coming out of training camp and out of preseason into the first game against the defending champs nonetheless, who you're
Yeah.
supposed to be competing with, and your shot looks broken.
Yeah, I mean, I think it already is a fleece, like, I'll get into the shot in a minute, but, like, look at that deal exclusively and singularly, it already is a fleece. You can say if the Knicks go on and win a championship, then it's a good deal. And sure it is, but if the Knicks win a championship, I don't think it's going to be because they gave up 5 first round picks to get Mikal Bridges. It'll be because of Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson and Mikal and Anunoby doing their part. But
Right.
that's not the deal that is going to set them over the top. Now, in terms of his shot, I do think switching your shot is something that like us on the internet and NBA Twitter makes a bigger deal out of it than like it really is. Like I think when you're a shooter and the way you pull the ball when you're coming around a screen this way, and if you're a righty, then maybe you got to arch your
Right.
shoulders a little bit this way, or if you're
Right.
coming around this way now, and like now the basket's over here, and I got to rotate this way, or if I'm fading, like there's so many times where you like change your shot depending on how the defense is. So it's not like you just like say, all right, I'm just gonna like add this in and like that's my shot through here on out. I don't think it's as big of a deal to say, all right, I'm gonna experiment with a little bit more of a hitch where I can get it high over the defenders. Like you can do that and then you can return back to maybe something more standard, or maybe you're gonna pull it down the next time around. I don't think it's as big a deal as people are making it out to be. I think it's one of those things that if you don't play a lot of basketball, then you're gonna watch that and be like, what is he crazy? Like he's done this for like 15 years. Why would he change it now? Like he's probably changed it a whole bunch of times. It changes from possession to possession if you really want to really look close into it and getting the mechanics that go into shooting a ball. I don't think it's the biggest deal that people are making out to be.
No, no, you make good points about having to adjust in different scenarios and how defenders are playing you and where you are on the court.
I
But I
just
do
realized anyone listening to this who I was showing them how I'm coming around the screens on each side is gonna have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. But
That's
trust
all
me,
right.
I
They I'm sure they've seen the videos, and if you haven't seen the videos and you're watching the Brooklyn Pod or listening to the Brooklyn Pod right now, go check it out
there
because
you go. Good
it ain't
plug. Good
pretty.
plug.
It
That's my
certainly ain't
co-host.
pretty. Certainly ain't pretty. But Colin, I remember. Look, and I was an NBA player, but I remember there was a point in my high school career where like I wasn't confident in my shot. I didn't feel good, and I changed it, and I just felt like it was a total mental thing, and I can't I can't like really fathom anybody changing their jump shot to way that his looks without there being some sort of mental impact in it too. Like you make all very valid points, but I do feel like there is
There are
something.
levels to it. There like if all of a sudden you want to start doing something like really wild, then like it is going to be a bigger change. So there's levels to it for sure. But sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, no, and I just I guess it was a shock, right? Especially after a trade and everything that went down, like the implications of this, the first round picks, everything. Of course, it's under. He's under a magnifying glass right now, right? He's under
Yeah.
a microscope. Like he can't slip up, and he can't underachieve in New York because they have very high expectations for him. They gave up all of those picks and all of those assets for this guy. who I really think is I think I've always thought highly of Mikhail, but I never thought of him as a star. I thought he was perfect in Phoenix in the
Yeah.
right system. But if his shot is broken the way that it was in the preseason, the way that it was in game one, again, could be an overreaction. But if this is what it is, it's gonna be a long season. And we're
Mhm.
gonna be seeing a whole lot of NBA Twitter discourse, for better or for worse. Make what you will of it. But
Yeah.
um, I I never want to kick anybody while they're down. Ultimately at the end of the day, Mikal Bridges is a human being. It's not personal, and it
No.
never is. We just love the game. But no, I don't have any remorse for him. He is a basketball player who's making millions of dollars to play the game he loves. He ditched the Nets. He didn't want to be the guy. He's with his buddies in New York. If he stinks, he stinks. Like it's like if he dies, he dies. Quote. What do you think? Do you have remorse for him?
I think that if you're a Nets fan and you're, like, actually, like, mad at Mikal Bridges, then you might just have no friends because, you can look me in the eye and tell me that if you're working in an office and your best pals from college are at the office across the street and you guys are in the same exact business that you don't wanna go and hang out with them and, like, transfer and, like, you get a sick offer over there, you're not gonna wanna go hang out with them, like, hell yeah, you wanna go do that. I totally understand it. Like, I either that or you're just, like, the chillest person who's ever lived and, like, you have, like, no FOMO whatsoever at all.
Yeah.
And even if, like, having said that, I think the only people who are still upset with them are it's the people who are still upset with Kevin Durant leaving and the big three breaking up and not winning a championship. And that was you just were delusional enough to still think that they could win after those guys left. When those guys
Right.
left, that's when the funeral was. That's when the championship dream was over. Like
Right.
you didn't know what was going to happen with McHale if they would build around him or not, but whatever it was going to be, it was not what we had before when it was this team is going to win the championship. That is like
Right.
100% their goal. They are the favorite. The NBA league poll in 2022, I think it was 74% of GMs said the Nets were going to win a championship. It's people who just delayed the funeral and I'm sorry, they were delusional to do it. Mikal Bridges and Cameron Johnson and Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith are not going to get you where Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving would. And that's why they got like a boatload of extra picks from that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely worth monitoring. Again, I could understand the hate or the backlash in the context of we have your picks and we want you to lose because it helps us and
This is
not
no
because we hate you.
This is no Saquon Barkley narrative, don't get me wrong.
Right.
It's
Oh, it's coming from
Saquon
the guy from Philly. Oh.
Saquon over no, I really shouldn't say that. He's still my hometown, and I should that's the sad thing is I should support him, but no, when your best pals in the world, like, play across the street, I totally understand wanting to go play with them.
Yeah.
Like, come
Yeah.
on.
Well, and I'll wrap it up with this. Nets fans should love Mikal Bridges right now. And
As
now
they
now
should.
that now that everything is settled and we understand exactly where the Nets are, this guy is a freaking superhero. He got you the hole that Kevin Durant got, if not better.
Yeah,
So and you've said that several times, so I'm gonna give you the credit right there. But Mikal Bridges is a hero in Brooklyn, baby.
you're damn right. It's like that scene from Spider-Man 2 where he's like, "Spider-Man was a hero. I just couldn't see it."
We'll touch on a couple more points. We'll keep it brief, Colin, and then we'll wrap this one up. But this has been a fun episode. Check us out on Twitter at the Brooklyn Pod. You can go to Instagram, the Brooklyn Pod. You can submit questions if you'd like for us to answer at
Mhm.
the Brooklyn Pod at gmail.com. So, Colin, I'm going to get into that point. We have Jonathan Andrews, who's a big fan of the Brooklyn. Jonathan, if you're listening to this, shout out to you. Thank you so much for rocking with us.
Mhm.
Colin, I want you to answer this one. Jonathan wants to know, he says that injuries are already derailing our front court, but I'm interested to see if our three young centers can coexist. Dayron Sharp seems to be the odd man out, but if he can shoot threes, can the Nets or should they keep him long term?
So I think an important thing to acknowledge here is that Sharp is going to be a restricted free agent, excuse me, at the end of this season. So it'll be like what we saw with Cameron Johnson, where they have a chance to match whatever teams offer him. And I think that they will be able to bring him back. One, I think the Nets like Sharp. Like I haven't. It's not like they're I have no idea what they're, but I've not heard any bad things. I guess they seem to like him. I know he's often brought up as the funniest guy in the locker room, so positive in terms of like that kind of like camaraderie stuff. But I also just don't think with like the injuries, and he had a great burst to start the season last year, but he hasn't been
Yeah,
on the court a whole lot. I don't think that there's enough there where opposing teams are going to be able to dish out a lot of money. Like they haven't seen enough on the court. Like he could come back and he could play fantastic to close the year, and that might push it, but it's still going to be like oh, you haven't been on the court like a whole ton, where I don't think
right,
someone's going to shell out a lot of money where the Nets are going to let him walk. I think because the Nets know him and they know the type of guy he is, along with what they've seen on the court, they like him better than anyone right now. So I think that they'll be able to match whatever is thrown out at him, and they'll be able to bring him back on a team friendly deal. What do you think,
right.
Pooch?
Right. His value right now isn't very high. You hit on every key point there. He just simply hasn't been out there enough to show us. Now, if he comes out here and starts ripping threes like Carl Anthony Towns type, where he can actually pick and pop, rebound the basketball, then maybe we'll be talking about a different story in a couple of months. But right now, he hasn't shown us enough. They just extended Nick Claxton to a very big deal. Um, I know Noah Clowney's only 6'9", but I think in the eyes of Sean Marks, he views him as a center, as a big, and I think that Clowney is going to emerge as their secondary big behind Claxton before Day'Ron might even get a chance to step on the court this season. So I could see them retaining him for very, very cheap, but the question is, does he garner it, and will they need him if Clowney does emerge and with Nick Claxton's deal? So I kind of defer to what you said.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, what their draft position is looking like. Like, I don't know. I don't think that, I mean, all we do is talk about Ace Bailey and Cooper Flag. They're not centers. You know what I mean? Like, I think you
Yeah,
got to look at, because this is a question that's already for his contract's up at the end of this year. It's a question that's for months from now. Like, we don't know exactly who might emerge, where the Nets might be picking. Like, we hope slash assume it's going to be a high pick, but we don't know who they're going to be targeting. So that's something you got to factor in. I don't know about Clowney being a center or not. I could see him going the route of where a lot of times they take power forwards and then later in their career when they bulk up a little bit more, they have them
yeah,
play the five. I remember people thought, can Claxton be a four because he was a skinnier guy? Claxton can
yeah.
never shoot like Clowney could, but actually he pulled it a little bit as a rookie, but that's neither here nor there. I think I wouldn't be shocked if they make Clowney a center, but they're clearly trying to bring him up as a power forward right now after shelling out that money to Claxton. So I don't think, at least for the time being, for the next for this year and maybe the next 2 years after, we're going to be at a point also where it's like, who is the backup big, Clowney or Sharp? I think the Nets will gladly sign Sharp for a couple more
Yeah,
years for a cheap deal. He can be the backup big and let Clowney cook and develop on his rookie contract and play the power forward when Dorian Finney-Smith and maybe Cam Johnson are out of the picture.
right. And let's not forget they have 4 first-round picks next year. So if Sean Marks has his eyes keyed on a big that he feels confident that he can get, maybe there is no room for Day'Ron Sharpe.
Hmm.
And on the flip side of that, like you said, maybe they just keep him for cheap because they really do like him. They see potential in, and he's young. But
Yeah.
moving forward, I do want to ask you this: if you have anything else that you want to say about Day'Ron Sharpe, then be my guest, Colin. But
No, I was just gonna say it's a good question, and we appreciate you, Jonathan. We know the Nets
yeah,
are a center factory. They don't always hold on to them, but they do produce bigs. So definitely always interesting to keep tabs on what the Nets are doing down with that position department.
for sure. Colin, did you happen to see the Nets NBA Cup court?
I took a peek at it. Yeah, similar to last year, but I saw they added like some
Yeah,
rings and there's a name for the zigzag. I don't know what it's called.
herringbone,
There you go.
herringbone.
There you go.
All right, I'm just gonna say this, and I'm gonna leave it at this.
Mhm.
I want you to cut this clip, and I want you to post it, even if it's 5 seconds. Bring back the OG Brooklyn Nets court. That's it. That's all I got.
No, you got. I want to hear you cook for a minute about the herringbone. That's all
You
you
want me
got.
to cook? You really want me to cook?
I think you should. I think you should, and then we can get out of here.
All right. So ready? The Nets came to Brooklyn from New Jersey, and they had this beautiful, beautiful standout court. Now I know Jay-Z was very much involved in this process with the Russians, with Prokhorov, with Dmitry Razumov, Irina Pavlova. Jay-Z wanted to make that court black. He wanted it to stick out on TV. He wanted it to be unique. The NBA wouldn't let it be black. They were not having that at that time.
Mhm.
They created this beautiful court that gave the Nets, I felt like, an identity, right? I often say to you, Colin, like the Boston Celtics, they have their little square checkered
Yeah.
court that they've
Yeah.
had forever, right? The Knicks court, other than the Kith court and the City Edition court, it's been pretty much the same. They've changed some colors here and there, but that logo has
Mhm.
always been there. I feel like every established team, like the Lakers have, if it's not the court, it's the lighting. It's something about that arena. It's something about the way that it pops on TV that is important to a team's identity. And I feel like you're a new team coming to Brooklyn. People fucking loved your court. Like people loved it. It was so unique. Herringbone is something that if you go to Brooklyn, you go to, a bar, if you go to a restaurant, especially down in Brooklyn Heights. I know I'm thinking of a specific spot, Brooklyn One Hotel, baby. Like you go in the bathrooms, there's black and white herringbone there. It is Brooklyn. It reminds you of it, and it stood out. It was hot. It was sexy. It made that black and white kind of pop. You knew you were playing the Nets when you were on that court, and I could just see Mirza Teletovich's smiling face at LeBron James on that beautiful court right now. So the point that I'm trying to make is that they've switched up so many things since then. The jerseys, the court, like everything that we haven't really had a chance, like as Nets fans, as whatever, like to like give this team an identity since they moved here. And I felt like that court, Nets fans have been like screaming at ownership, at front office, at everybody, like, yo, please bring it back with the subway tiles, with like things that encapsulate
We need a
Brooklyn.
beam. We need a jet black beam that you can't even
Oh,
see.
you won't, yeah, you won't even see it. I
That'll
mean,
give us
we like,
identity.
but even that, like Barclays Center with the Oculus out front, like it looking like a spaceship with the rust and everything. It was building an identity. You walked in there, it smelled good, and then you saw that court, and it was like it popped. It had the herringbone design that no other team has ever used, and they just like one day were just like, you know what? Let's use a grayscale court, like the ugliest thing in the world. I'm sorry, but like it's ugly. It might be really one of the worst courts in the league.
They should do something called like instead of light the beam, we drop the net. And there's a big helicopter that drops like a giant like butterfly net on the whole stadium, and everyone has to like crawl their way out of it when they leave.
Oh
No,
yeah,
that would be
that
terrible.
yeah, that no,
I saw some guy on
that
Twitter where it was like the Hornets should do when they win a game, they like release just like a ton of hornets into the stadium and that's like release the bees, like
yeah.
something horrible.
Just drop the nets from the sky. Just
Yeah.
don't trap me in it because I gotta get on the LIRR. But
Yeah.
I
For sure.
I look, all that matters are the guys playing it and the product that's on the court. But like I do think it's important when it comes to a brand identity, consistency, building a fan base, and like, hearing your fans. Like it's very, very obvious that people want that original court back. It has nothing to do with the NBA Cup. But the fact that they kind of brought the herringbone back in is like it's a little bit of a tease. It's like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? And it kind of segues into something that I was going to bring up, that the NBA and Nike reportedly have signed a 12-year deal, which I thought Nike has come up with some creative designs. They brought some old school jerseys back, but you know how infuriating it is for me, and I'm sure many other fans out there. Like you spend $110 on a jersey, and then it just disappears, like, or
Yeah.
it's not your color. Like I'm turning on games, and
Oh, I
you know,
cannot stand that. As
it's
someone
so
who's like dabbled in I'm not like a big graphic designer, but the whole goal of designing a uniform and a color and a logo is you get your four colors that are your team's color scheme and you do the best you can with those colors. If I can
right,
just be the Milwaukee Bucks and say, fuck it, I want to use blue, then there's no rules anymore. There's no challenge. It's just like it's like playing a game and there's no more rules. Like I can run
right,
up and I can unscrew the basket and put the ball in it like 5 times in a row and that's
right.
5 points. It's I hate that. You got me a little
Yo,
fired
what?
up at the end of the game now. I'm
Yo,
totally in
what's the
agreement with
point
you.
of? what's the point of team having colors these days? Like, I don't, I turned the TV on. I remember I tweeted this and someone was like, well, you could just check the scoreboard at the bottom to, being a wise ass. And I said, it's not about that, dude. I turn the game on and I see blue for the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know who's playing. Like,
Yeah,
I think that it's the Charlotte Hornets playing when it's the freaking Sacramento Kings.
it's
It's like,
stupid. Yeah.
it's all, the problem here is a bigger issue that the NBA and basketball has right now. The purity of the game is gone because they've commercialized it so freaking much that it's very, 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 very frustrating. Like, I
Mhm.
want to be able to focus on hoops. I want to be able to talk about hoops with Colin Hellwig on the Brooklyn podcast, and not all this other bullshit that's going on. Right? NBA Twitter, like, and this new generation. With all due respect, I'm not trying to be a get off my lawn guy, but like the All-Star game. Like there there were LED lights everywhere. I couldn't see where the three-point line was. Like
Yeah.
it was like all these advertisements. I mean, even the Nets one on their jersey, it's like everything is about money. And we're no longer here to hide it from you. We're
Mhm.
just letting you know. And in fact, why don't you go gamble on the game? Here's the over under. We're gonna put that to you during the timeout. This timeout is brought to you by DraftKings. Here, there's a bunch of 5-year-olds watching this game, and gambling is a very, very bad thing, folks. It's not a good thing. I'm not shaming anyone who does it, but it should not be promoted to young kids. But we're commercializing the game so much because all we care about is money. You're telling us that, and that's what fucking pisses me off. Like, that's what gets me fired up. You wanted me to go on a rant about the courts. I'll let you know why they're commercializing the game and why it's actually affecting the product. It's too much money is involved. I want these guys to get paid. I want player empowerment, but I don't want to see the court being freaking green at the All-Star game and me not being able to tell what the hell I'm looking at. I want to be able to turn on a game and know who's playing each other without having to look at the scoreboard, Mister Anthony 596 on Twitter. Like, it's
Mhm.
just it's infuriating for me because I love this game so much. I grew up on it. It was the first love and one of the very few loves that I have in my life. And to see it turn into what it has on the court with the jerseys, with the gambling, with everything, it has gotten so commercialized that I'm disgusted. Like, and I'm sure you could ask any of the people that are basketball purists that will tell you the same freaking thing.
I'm so glad we got philosophical to close this baby out.
It's been a long time coming
Yeah.
because, again, I appreciate Nike's creativity. I appreciate them trying to bring back some old school jerseys and draw up some cool concepts and things like that. But I just feel that the NBA has gotten way too ahead of themselves with the money
Mhm.
aspect of this. And again, let's not be mistaken. I've gambled before, I've done this, but there are children watching these games.
Yeah.
Like, let's be a little bit, more subtle. I shouldn't have 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds walking around saying, well, I think Cam Thomas is gonna hit the over on the 26 and a half. I mean, what the fuck?
Chuck, are you going over or under rebounds tonight? I'm going over. It's clearly they recorded all of these. It's like a 2K game that they do when they're coming on
Right. Right.
every commercial.
And Colin, not for nothing, but how many, how easy would it be for, a father out there, not that they're wrong or right, but like a father to just have an account on his laptop and a kid go in and pick one per night. Like, like, and
Mhm.
not saying that there's really anything toxic about, a $2 bet or something like that, but like, come on. Like I said, like the purity of the game just feels like it's gone. We're prioritizing the wrong things when I would really like to prioritize the on-court product right now, which hopefully is in good hands when LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, all those guys of the world are gone. And I think that Anthony Edwards and Victor Wembanyama and all these guys can bring that back, but I'm worried about the future of basketball given how commercialized it is.
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement. I think it was very well said to finish up here. I'm
I
glad you got it
I
off your chest, buddy.
uh, it's something that, it's bothered me. And it's time that I got it out. I don't think if Nike or DraftKings are listening to this right now, they'll be too thrilled. But we're here to talk basketball, so
Yes,
I'm
sir.
talking basketball.
Yes, sir.
Forecast for the Nets as before we close out, Colin. We got the Orlando Magic tomorrow. We got the Bucks after that. It's going to be the first Nets home opener, first
I'll be there.
home game. for the Nets. Colin will be there covering live. That's going to be Sunday, October 27th. Got Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets, October 29th, and then John Morant and the Grizzlies on the 30th. So the next 4 games, Colin, they're against playoff teams, tough teams. Do you see any Nets wins?
I'm gonna say that our forecast is stormy. I don't see any wins there. I think the only chance is maybe the Grizzlies are still working jaw back. I think you said that's a B2B.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
know if it's a B2B for the Grizzlies. I know oftentimes when the NBA does give you a B2B, they line it up with the other team. So
Yeah.
maybe the Grizzlies will be a little bit out of sync. Maybe they'll be a little tired. The Nets can steal one, but no, I don't. Those are all good teams. Like credit to them, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm going with Stormy. What do you think?
Stormy, potentially a hurricane.
Yeah,
Um, the Grizzlies game might be one that they sneak out, but you know what?
the Grizzlies could
We had
also smoke them because I don't know if you've noticed the Grizzlies have been one of those teams that even when the Nets were good and the Grizzlies were still rebuilding, always gave them trouble.
yeah. They kind of encapsulate what the Nets want to be. Like they have
Grit
a
and
lot of
grind.
that grit and that. Yeah, exactly. Now I can see like weirdly enough, like it's early, it's the beginning of the season. Teams are kind of taking nights off. They're shaking off the rust. Nikola Jokic sits a game or he plays the first half. They take the Nets light and they squeeze one out. I'm not
Mhm.
saying they're going to beat the Nuggets, but we had discussed this on the last podcast about our preview and seeing like maybe there's a couple of wins here and there because team rest players or early season wins because they play hard. Like
Yeah.
simple as that. But I'm
Yeah.
saying they start the season 0-5. Last night was their game to win and they didn't. So
Yeah. We are in agreement there.
we move on. So, Colin, you're going to be covering the first game of the season, the first home game of the season against the Bucks, and you'll be there for the first 5 home games, correct?
Believe so. Most of them. I may be indisposed for the Chicago game, but I'll be there for most of the week. So anyone listens around, come say what's up.
Cool. Shoot,
I'll
shoot,
be
shoot
there.
your personal
Lucas will
handle
be
so
there
people can
too.
follow you. Shoot your personal handle so people can follow you.
You boys know me. 2 L's in Colin, 1 L in Hellwig. Just Colin Hellwig on Twitter. Colin Hellwig 115 on Instagram. I don't really use my IG for work that much, but it's tagged there on follow the Brooklyn Pod on Instagram, by the way, if you have the
Yeah.
chance. And TikTok too, tagged on there. But yeah, come check us out.
The man, the myth, the legend, Colin Hellwig. He's doing great work on netsdaily.com. He's running the TikTok accounts, the Instagram accounts, all the social media accounts. So while you're at it, check us out on Apple, on Spotify. Leave a review if you'd like to. Leave a rating, whatever it might be. If you're on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, we are at the Brooklyn Pod. Very simply put. And if you want to get your questions answered by myself or Colin, just email us at thebrooklynpod@gmail.com. Or you can also tweet at us. Colin, it's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to dissecting more games. We'll see how it goes. But an A minus, an A for the Nets after their first impression.
Mm-hmm. We'll take it. We'll take it.
In 2 weeks, until then, my friend, good luck with your Yankees. Folks that are listening, we appreciate your support. And as I always say, it's been real, it's been nice. In other words, it's been real nice.
Peace, guys. Take care.
Take care.